And we have, yeah, this, I'm not sure. So anyway, Tim Roberts, we're here to talk about kind of poke fun on both sides of the house as far as pen testers as well as clients. Just our experience and other stories that we've heard from coworkers as well. Issues that you might run across as you are, doing an assessment, or a client, as you're getting an assessment scheduled and wanting that to happen. Some things that should be pretty obvious, but when we talk about it, you're going to be like seriously, like that really happened? That is so stupid. So we're going to hopefully have some fun, and you'll see from some of the gifts and stuff that we have, we are extremely mature and very professional. So, any questions on what we've talked about so far? Yeah, it's, well, it's all, it all relates to video here, so. Yeah. There are people above watching out for me, so. Like, oh, I'm not gonna make him chug that. Yeah, I've exit to the left. Thanks, Costa. So, how about that internet? Guess that internet's here to stay, huh? Maybe for a while. Yeah, Internet 2.0. That's gonna be cool. What the hell is that? So I wonder if we could just turn this around to face and everyone
At the point where we're turning it off and turning it back on again.
gather around. Everyone come in close. We're gonna sit down. We're gonna do just like a campfire talk here. So, yeah. I wonder if it's a bad adapter. Yeah. Awesome. Thanks, man. Now I'm gonna have to drink this Zima. Damn it. Get out of here. I'm trying to be helpful. All right, so we just go ahead and just dig into it and let that catch up. And all right. So what's the absolute dumbest thing that you guys have seen? Let's say, okay, let's start with clients that have had. This is probably a really awful way to start this, like going off the slides. But when you've had a pen tester come in and start working on an environment, like what's the absolute dumbest thing you've seen? You're like, did that really just happen? Did I really just pay that guy to come in here and do this? Anybody want to? Here's this USB drive. The pen tester did that, like on a box and something. What's that? Oh, finding. I'm talking about, so like you pay a guy to come in and do an assessment, and he does something that's so stupid, you're like, what, how does this guy have a job? Oh yeah, like, oh yeah, here's our, and we're actually going to touch on that. That's a good, the scope, we're gonna find its scope too. It's, you had your hand up, Brent? Oh, okay, that's a good one. Yeah, somebody snuck in, brute force attempt at password cracking was sneaking in her office and trying to log into her desktop at her keyboard manually. And was it a physical social, or is it supposed to be like just an actual? Oh, okay, that's so. So was it that he didn't lift up the keyboard to see your password written underneath it? Right. All right, let's try the other side where we're getting this going. So, as a pen tester, what is the worst thing that you've seen a client do as far as like getting this set up? You go in there and you're like really like they knew I was going to be here this week or something, right? Unsecured smoking tents. Yes, and absolutely, we love smoking areas for physical assessments. All right, who else wants to poke fun on the client side here? That's pretty bad. Yeah. Yeah, so you want to here. Okay. There's no video. So here. Hey, what's your name? Where are you from? How long did you come from?
Oh, my name's Corey Shell.
What was the stupid thing?
Well, so instead of using group policy to make users members of the local administrators group on endpoints, they took the domain users security group and made it a member of the built-in administrators security group. All right, can you hear me?
Yeah, there we go.
All right, sorry about that. So I've seen this actually a couple of times. It's kind of depressing, but instead of using group policy to push out, which you don't want to use group policy preferences to push out, make members of a member of the local administrators security group. They made the domain user security group a member of the built-in administrators security group, which effectively made every user in the domain a domain admin.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's like the Oprah Winfrey. It's like, you get domain admin. You get domain admin. Everybody gets domain admin. It's great. So, one of the worst things I think I've ever seen was, when you can make notes about your users, they actually had every user's password as notes for users. So, once you get domain admin, so you start looking at that, and now you have every user's current password in clear text right there. So that was pretty awesome. No, yeah, well, I realized this was after, and I was like, I'm really not seeing this. This is not. It was bad. So. Oh yeah, clear text, right? With the password, the file is called password dot something. Hey, well, yeah, why not, right? Yeah, you got to get some good circulation. Sorry about the video issue here, guys. Oh yeah, like hey, we got them. Yeah, that's yeah, that's always fun. You look really excited to tell this one. Yeah, you've got to love when you find something that's clearly a higher critical, and they try everything in their power to like, no, it's a low or something like that, and you're like, no, but it's not. Yeah, yeah. Can you make it like a soft blue? Something that's a little more welcoming. So yeah, admin. Yeah, that's great. Oh yeah, leaving in the old access is great too. So, oh yeah. So something I found too while doing an assessment was doing OSINT, actually digging through, finding information about this company, and one of their devs had signed up for a dev help forum with their work email. So I was able to go through and do some digging, and ended up finding a thread. It was for a forum that you had to pay for, but the post was a few years old, so it had been archived by Google. And so I was able to read it, and I was able to go through, and they had asked for help for someone that was a part of the group. So they posted credentials. They also posted some database schema information. They didn't scrub it. It was, so I was like, well, that's cool. It's a couple of years old, but I'm going to try it just to see. Credentials were still valid. The table names and everything were still good. So I had a lot of fun with that assessment. So, yeah. So if you get help on forums like that, you create a temporary account or something, make sure you limit it or you remove it when it's done. Please don't leave that stuff on there. So, but yeah, let's, I think maybe instead of having that up here, if we can just kind of use it as a reference.
We have some really funny images. We'll just let you guys use your imagination. So when we say stuff to prevent death by PowerPoint, then just laugh when there's awkward silence.
Yep.
There we go. Yeah, we're getting it.
You guys didn't get iced. It's funnier to us, okay? All right, yeah, we'll just click through. Yeah, we'll just go. Cool. Yeah. All right. Thanks for coming.
Yeah. So anyway, we do apologize for this. So this is going to be kind of informal now that we don't have a PowerPoint to go after, because that's what we base all of our talks after, is just reading our PowerPoints.
Yeah, we don't really know what we're talking about, so we just read. So.
Right. So yeah, we'll get started.
Yeah. So yeah, obviously as pen testers, we are tasked with going in and identifying vulnerabilities and things for clients. So.
And then as clients, you're tasked with facilitating assessments to help improve your security, but most of the time it's driven by compliance. It's checkbox security. Well, I have to do this, so that's why I'm doing it. And I want to do the minimum baseline thing that I can do just to get that check mark and then move on. So that happens quite a bit.
Yeah, and sometimes we screw up. So again, as I mentioned, we're going to kind of poke fun at both sides of the house.
So what kind of testing is conveyed? When you're doing, even prior to doing your kickoff call or discussing the rules of engagement or anything like that, what's your sales team conveying to the client? So sometimes this has happened in the past, not necessarily on our team, but this has happened with like friends telling me, the sales guys will go out there and say, we're doing a penetration assessment. And the client's like, okay, great. And in their head, they don't know what a penetration assessment is. They just know, they're going to run some maybe Nessus scans and do this or that, and we're good to go. And then you get in, and then they end up they're like, oh crap, you got into our domain, and you've changed some stuff, and you've done this, and there's a big convoluted communication between what you're supposed to do and what they expected you to do.
Yeah, so something you want to go over is how far can you exploit. There have been cases where we've gone in, the client just basically wants, hey, before you do like any RCE or anything like that, let us know, and we'll see if it's okay for you to continue. And so they have, they block you from really doing anything. So basically you can say, hey, I found this, I'd like to see what else I can do with it. And they're like, no, thanks, but, thanks for your help, and then move on.
When you're setting up your things, knowing the start and stop time, knowing when to start, when you do send out like a scan notification, so you want to do it like probably the week before. That's usually what we do, just to say, hey, here's the source addresses that everything's going to be coming from. If they have like a managed security service provider or a SOC or something like that, that way they can see, hey, you're not actually being attacked. These are legitimate attacks. They're supposed to be coming through. It's approved. Depending on what kind of assessment it is. If you're doing some kind of covert thing where you're testing incident response and how they're replying, if their signatures are tripping and stuff like that, of course you want to consider that. But most of the time you want to let them know when you're going to start, when you're going to stop, when they can expect that traffic.
We have a really funny GIF of a guy like walking through a window. It's pretty funny, so I'm sorry.
You guys could see it.
So, an issue too that, so you have an assessment that's supposed to start, and when you get on site, the point of contact isn't there. You can't get a hold of him. The receptionist finally tells you, oh yeah, he's on vacation this week. And you're like, oh cool. Does anybody else know? So you sit in the lobby for 2 to 3 hours before they finally find somebody that might have been on the call and knows what's going on. So make sure that you have a few points of contact in case the client accidentally forgets that they scheduled that for that week.
Or in the middle of the night, you're doing an overnight assessment and you knock down a box, but you don't know, and you're like, oh crap, I'm not getting any communication with the server anymore. What happened? And then you can't contact anybody to find out what's going on, especially if it's a production box. That's awful.
Yeah, and make sure that you're available too. That way, if you are doing testing and something happens, and hey, you're burning down our entire network, can't get a hold of you, can you please call me back? That's never a good thing. So make sure that you're always available. If it's a case where you might not be available, make sure that there is a backup person that they can call that could maybe try to get a hold of you as well. So.
Not questioning the scope. Is it for PCI? If it's a pen test, segmentation. Oh, what's going on here?
Is it working?
Is it working? No. It felt like it.
Yeah, little moment of hope.
Anyway.
Glad you guys could experience that.
So the pen test is a segmentation test, right, for PCI. Are you starting from an adjacent network, or are they dropping you into the cardholder data environment? So if you're trying to test to see if you can get access to the cardholder data environment, why are they dropping you into the CD, right? So these are things to consider as well. Try to talk to them about access adjacent networks from VLANs, having it sent to your port. Are you able to see the CD from outside and from inside? What does that exposure look like?
And then, do they have Wi-Fi? Is it in scope? So if you're looking at segmentation testing and they have a guest network and they say, don't touch Wi-Fi, maybe say, well, if you have people that can just walk into your lobby and get on your guest network, might be a good idea for us to check to see if there's something that we can see that we're not supposed to. So is the domain controller in scope? Yeah, we're serious. That's happened before. Like, hey, here's this, but not the domain controller. And it's like, okay, well, how am I supposed to, connect to that? And so sometimes they might be hiding things for a reason, that they have some flaws, maybe some things they don't want on a report or something, or whatever the reason may be, which, is fine. They, teach their own. But maybe explain the risks of, okay, if you don't allow me to look at this, here are some potential things that could be over, that an attacker might find that I could potentially point out to you and help you fix. So it's always good to kind of have that conversation with them.
All right. Did you find a denial of service vulnerability? Get permission before you try to exploit that crap. Okay. Sometimes people are like, oh, wait, I'm going to just sit there and I'm going to test out the exploits and see if it works. And I don't really know much about the script I downloaded from GitHub, but it seemed pretty cool and it said it can test it. So I'm going to do it. Oh, it's production environment. Bam. Oh, oops. Sorry.
Yeah, I just found a whole folder of anonymous PowerShell scripts that were released. Is it cool if I try these things out? So, don't ever do that. So, so talking about denial of service. So, denial of service is rarely in scope. It's very specific if it is. So if you do find something like Eternal Blue or another remote code execution, those also have the potential to knock a service over. So if you're not sure the stability of it, make sure you tell the client, hey, I found this. I'd like to exploit it. That way they can keep an eye on it too. That way if something does happen, they're there and they can, reset the box or whatever they need to do.
I can jump in if you want.
All right, that's all right. That's all right, guys. We'll have these slides available on our site for you to download and look at and laugh later. So.
Enable macros before you run it, though.
Arriving on site with outdated tools. I haven't updated Metasploit in a couple months. That's cool. I'm just going to go on site and update that in the middle of the engagement, or your operating system's out of date. Like you're not patching your own system, so you've got a vulnerable system. Now you're connecting to their network with your vulnerable test system. Make sure that everything's patched. Make sure your tools are up to date. That you know how to use the tools. Things like that.
Yeah, and something that's usually not good to do too is updating your tools while you're on site, because every single update works perfect and never breaks anything. So maybe take care of that before you go on site and test. Make sure things are still in working order, so that you're not wasting not only your time but the client's time that they paid a pretty penny for you to be there for.
Let's say you're doing a remote assessment. So, like, I don't know, the client wants you to test through their VPN, and then it takes their change control process a week to process that request, but you're supposed to be on site that week. So don't expect them to give that. If you're a client, convey, hey, this is going to take us a while, so let's go ahead and get what we need to get out of the way. That way it's already ready. We can give you the credentials, and you can begin testing. If you're going to ship them a Dropbox, make sure that you're allowing adequate time to ship them the Dropbox, to plug it into the network, and to test connectivity even before the week that you're supposed to begin your testing.
Yeah, it's not good if the test starts Monday and then you contact them the end of day Wednesday and say, hey, I can't log in. And they're like, well, what have you been doing for 3 days? So check those things out. It's also good to make sure that you have all the cables and stuff you need. Show up on site bright and early. You've never done
we
that
got
before, right?
3 cables up here. I don't know what's going on.
So you show up Monday. You're like, oh, I'm ready to go, and you get everything set up, and it's like, oh, I forgot my dongle to plug into the network. Because Mac. So then you have to take a really early lunch break and leave and go find a place to buy your cables. It doesn't look good. So.
Not presenting yourself as a professional. So I got really drunk last night because that Paul Oakenfold concert was amazing. And I've got an assessment tomorrow morning. So I'm going to try to get there, and I'm hungover. And the client can tell because I reek of alcohol and I have a big beard and disheveled looks. It's important that you acknowledge that when you are on site for these client assessments, especially if you're doing a covert, that you're looking at their kind of dress code, right? What does it look like? What does their company culture look like? Try to mimic that. It's just professionalism, but it's also if you're doing these kind of covert external type assessments, it makes sense that you kind of look the part unless you're doing like a contractor or something for your guys.
Showing up with your work bag and your puke bag, it's probably not a good combination. We have a gif of Robin Williams as like some really homeless guy with like really long beard begging for money. So yeah, so
there we go.
Yeah, as I describe it, I'm like, man, I'm an asshole. So yeah, not showing up on time, so they expect you to be there. If you're supposed to start at 8, most places you have to show an ID, get a visitor badge, things like that. Get there, that way all that stuff's taken care of. So when the client comes to the lobby to get you at 8 o'clock, you're there. You're not super late or anything because, they're paying for you to be there, right? So respect their time, and hopefully they'll respect yours as well. So.
And did you finish up early? So let's say that you've got 3 resources scheduled for you. So you got 3 pen testers arriving on site. You're hanging out. You're scheduled for, I don't know, the level of effort's like 80 hours. So you're there. You knock it out in 2 days because you guys are awesome. And all right, well, we're finished. So
the main controller was out of scope. So
yeah. What do we do now? And then you're sitting there twiddling your thumbs. It's important that you convey to the client, hey, we finished this, but what else do you need? How else can we help and how else can we provide assistance to you? Even though that we finished the scope, we've already done everything that we can, we're still here. And you're consulting, because ultimately it's not just pen testing, right? It's not just, hey, bam, there's your ugly baby. It's a little more tactful than that, right? You're consulting. Hopefully. It's consultant work, hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully. And maybe too, let's say you found some pretty critical vulnerabilities, and again you have some time left. Help them remediate that stuff, and then test it again. That way, before you leave, those are some things that you've helped strengthen while you're there. So, or as Tim said, maybe they're really busy and they want you. They're like, oh, you're done 2 days early. Great, get out. I don't want to, I don't want to have to bother with you guys anymore. So.
Evidence gathering. Keep in mind that whatever you find, you have to be able to replicate that. You have to be able to show evidence, like legitimate evidence. That even the most seasoned, let's say they have a pen tester on their team, the client does, and they want to replicate that, the exact attack that you exploited. They want to replicate it on their side so they can remediate and better understand it. Make sure that you're conveying that in your findings. So when you deliver that to the client, this is exactly how I did this. Oh, and look at my screenshot. I've got this awesome new Ghost in the Shell wallpaper with my opacity set to 20% on my terminal that I'm showing this example code execution in. Don't do that. Those are sloppy screenshots, and it's bad for the clients because sometimes they like to print these out and they take them to executive meetings or C-level meetings. And now they've got all these big black blocks all over it with all these different colors and hard to read screenshots.
Yeah, keep in mind that everything you take a screenshot of, you don't want like a picture of your entire screen. Like shrink it down to what's important. make sure that, as Tim said, that it's legible, because these are going to be shrunk down even more to fit on a Word document and then printed out in black and white. So, just things to keep in mind.
And I've seen screenshots, like literally, like they'll have, oh, yeah, let's do it. Screenshots where they'll have, I'm going to put a USB in your computer. And
Oh, it's reverse.
I don't know.
YOLO. Let's
All
do
right.
it.
What's your name?
Sam.
Sam. Everybody look at Sam. What's your last name? What is it?
Bradstreet.
Bradstreet? Sam Bradstreet. Everybody remember that.
What's your password?
I like your mom.
Yeah. So something else too that as far as soft skills and things go, something that I've heard kind of being an issue as far as the pen tester side is keeping the client in the dark. If you're doing an assessment that lasts a few weeks long or even a week, make sure you keep the client updated. I know some prefer, hey, at the end of each workday, can you let me know when you're finished testing? And that's cool, just whatever their preference is. But at least end of day Friday, just shoot them a quick email that says, hey, we're finished for the week. This is what we did. This is what we're planning to do next week. And here are a few outstanding requests that we still have for whatever it may be. Just something that they can know that there's progress with the assessment and they can know what to expect.
No, I was looking for the HDMI adapter. But we're going to use VGA.
All right, let's gather around so close here. We'll try it out here. Let's see what we can do until Tim needs it to put malware on his machine.
Whoa, look at that. Woo. Yeah.
All right.
So we're going to start over.
Yeah. My name's Brent. This is Tim. So
this is us. That's a funny gif. Crying there.
See, I told you that highly mature. Yeah, I'm glad you get to see this one.
And through the window.
Oh,
there we go.
That was Tim. No,
it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. Benny Hill's awesome. All right. So which one are we on here?
Or on that one.
Oh, that one's. Yeah.
See, when you don't describe it and you just look at it, it's kind of funny, but.
So yeah, screenshots like that. Don't do that.
Yep. Yeah, we're good on that one.
Not saving your evidence as you go. This is an awful feeling. So
has anybody ever done? I'm just curious. Yeah,
we saw your hand.
Yeah, it's okay. No shame.
So make sure that you're actually keeping adequate logs of what you're doing. Notes, regardless if it's a network assessment or a physical or social engineering assessment. This happened to me once. I convinced everybody. I got into a data center. And I got so excited that I got into this data center and my adrenaline was going that I forgot to take pictures and I forgot to do anything. I was like, oh yeah, I'm in here. And I got out and then I got back out to my car and then I was like, oh crap. I forgot to take, because I'm trying to scroll through my phone to make sure I got legitimate pictures and everything to show the client to put in the report. And I realized I did not, and I had to break into the facility again by telling them, oh yeah, sorry, I forgot my adapter in there. And then they let me back in, but yeah, so.
Yeah.
So I had more to add to the report.
Yeah, so I've actually had instances before where, doing web apps or whatever, where I was able to go pretty deep into the rabbit hole. And then, 3 hours later, when I started hitting a wall, it was like, oh man, that was awesome. And it's like, oh crap, where did I start? What did I do next? So then you have to do it all over again and take screenshots. So, if you haven't had that, hopefully I just saved you hours worth of rework. So.
And backing up your stuff, your scans, like your burp scans, things like that, so that another consultant, if they have to, like say you have remediation testing, the client wants you to go and retest after they've had adequate time to address some of the issues, and now a different consultant is doing the remediation testing. Or it's next year, and then a different person's doing the testing. And they want to see what your findings were the previous year, the previous time around, to see if the same issues still reside there. So you want to make sure that you're able to get that information. It's all in the same place. It's all kind of neat and organized. Yeah.
Yeah, so one time I was in a hurry to go on a trip, and I put my luggage and my backpack behind my SUV, and my wife and daughter were taking me to the airport. And so we start backing up, and I was like, what's wrong with the truck? So I put it in, bump. So I was like, what was that? It was my laptop bag and my luggage bag that I had resting on the back of the tire and forgot to put it in the truck. So, yeah, luckily I had some assessment information backed up to the internal network and got a new laptop. So if you need a new laptop, do that, but make sure you back up your work first. So
I was actually on site one time, and I was on my way to on site, and I was going through TSA, and the TSA agent dropped my laptop, and I had a dent on my laptop, but it jacked with the video on my laptop, and I was going on site too, so my video was all messed up, and I'm trying to sit there, and all the colors are all jacked up, there's lines to the screen, and so I didn't have a backup either, so it wasn't as easy as going to find another laptop and then just, recovering it and saying, okay, well, here's some of the stuff that I did. Let's continue.
We'll kind of go low on time. We're going to kind of speed through some of this a little bit. Oh, yeah, so, that one. So, make sure your VMs or your computer are encrypted that way. If it gets stolen or something, you just want to protect that client data.
Also, if you're a client, don't send the scope and talk about your vulnerabilities through email. Like, I've seen some clients will CC people, and I'll see Yahoo accounts and they're freaking CC. Don't do that.
Yeah.
You need to have a secure location so that you're delivering that. As a pen tester, providing that for the client so that they have that. But as a client also, just holding them accountable to say, hey, don't deliver this via email.
Yeah, like Equifax data storage or something.
Right.
That's probably a good. Too soon? Sorry. Ignoring the scope. So, as pen testers, we want to go in and go after everything we can, but scoping is there for a reason. Maybe they have some old legacy systems that they are aware of the vulnerabilities, they're aware of the issues, and basically looking at these servers makes them, crash. So, make sure that you are abiding to the scope. And as I mentioned earlier, if you see something that should be added to it, talk to them first. Don't just, go in and do whatever you want, because it's not your environment. You're there to help out the client.
And if you're a client, don't be surprised, like, if pen testers get a little creative. If you're like, you're doing a physical assessment, you can take stuff, you can take a laptop, just make sure you bring it back or whatever. And then, there's actually some guys on our team that rolled out a bin, a sensitive data destruction bin that was like the size of a refrigerator. They untethered it and they rolled it out of the building. And nobody said anything. And they actually put it in front of...
Yeah, they put it right in front of the point of contact's window outside of his office. So
and
when he looked out of his window,
freaked out.
it was
They're like,
right
whoa,
there.
you can't do that. We're like, no, you said we could take stuff out.
Yeah.
So.
Maybe we should put trolling. Is trolling in scope or not? So
we mentioned this earlier, making sure your system's not vulnerable. So don't connect a vulnerable system to your client's network.
Yeah, so when you're going through, you're enumerating, say you're building your own scope, or they give you a range, and you happen to be in that range, so are other coworkers. And you're going through, and you don't get their IP, and you're going to work, and all of a sudden you realize, hey, I have a shell on a machine, and then all of a sudden that machine stops responding because it's towards the end of the day, it's about time to go home. So you go to the client and say, hey, got this IP, had access to this database on there, and it's not responding. I just want to make sure that I didn't kill something. And they're like, yeah, that's not one of our IPs. So you come to find out it was your coworker's IP because you didn't get his IP and you popped his box and he actually shut it down because it was end of day and then you look, stellar. So, I may or may not have done that before.
Again, don't connect vulnerable systems to your client's network.
Yeah. A few teaching moments. What's that? Yeah. Oh man, I've got one. It's like 0.1. I can do anything.
So we mentioned this earlier too, telling story. Make sure that you're able to walk through, the exploitation, the vulnerability, explain how it worked and everything. But also understand that when you're doing this, you're basically telling the network team or the app team or the client in general, hey, you've got kind of an ugly baby.
Yeah. Exactly.
And so, when I'm saying that is because some of these guys have worked tirelessly on, from legacy to whatever,
been there for
establishing
years.
This architecture or this, their systems and building it. And so they're proud of that stuff. Mm-hmm. And a lot of them, it's important too to tell them that, there's some issues, but here's some commendable practices. You guys are doing this right. It's not always you're doing everything wrong. These are all the bad things. And I think as pen testers, sometimes we get caught in that, just pointing out the issues and not pointing out the things that they're doing a great job on.
Yeah, and just, again, keep in mind, they've spent a lot of time working on this, and so make sure you're tactful about it. Yeah, don't be a jerk. Yeah, don't desensitize. And I think too, because of, sometimes there can be a weird relationship between pen testers and clients, because you're like, okay, great, it's these guys again coming in just to give me a lot more work to do, or all these things. So we've got to figure out how to address that with them, where you can actually build that relationship and you're not butting heads, because, kind of like the help me help you type thing. So, can we all just get along?
Yeah, it's not just the us versus them, the red versus blue, that's a thing, right? But it's not a competition to be like, hey, we messed your stuff up, what'd you do? Or, hey, yeah, let's see if you can get into our stuff.
You guys are
It can be friendly, but also, it's understanding that a pen tester's not an auditor too. That happens a lot. Mm-hmm. Every time I arrive on site, they're like, oh crap, another auditor's here. Everybody hates auditors, and it's a waste of time for them. Yeah, it's wasting my time. It's getting my daily grind out of, skewed, and I hate these guys for being here and making my job worse. That shouldn't be that way. Yeah. You should be kind of excited that we're there to help out.
Yeah, I know we're kind of getting close on time here. Report, just keep in mind that one is always expected at the end of each assessment. So as you're going through and doing the assessment, always keep in mind you have to explain to the client what you did, how you did it, and then you want to give recommendations on how to remediate those vulnerabilities. So, can we all repeat at the same time? Can we say a vuln scan is not a pen test? Ready? A vuln scan is not a pen test. All right, thank you.
Amen.
So, this is something that we keep running into. We're like, yeah, we bought this pen test, and we did pretty well. And you see it, and it was a Nessus scan or something, where they put their logo on it, on top of the Nessus, the Tenable logo. So,
but also clients sometimes expect just that.
Yeah.
They don't. Like I was saying earlier, they don't really understand what a penetration test is, and they're just like, oh, okay, well, we're just expecting you to come in and run some scans and tell us some of the vulnerabilities those automated tools picked up. And this actually happened to me one time, where a client said that they kept calling it a penetration assessment, and we clearly conveyed to them that this was a pen test and I was going to be manually testing and exploiting these things. Is this cool? Yeah, this is cool. And they come there, and then as soon as I start doing that, they flipped out. Or I asked them a question. I believe this particular client, I'd said, hey, what's your lockout threshold? And they were like, oh, it's 5. I'm like, okay, cool. Well, because it was a partial disclosure, so we're kind of working hand in hand. And they're like, oh, it's 5. I'm like, okay, great. So I set my tools to 3 attempts. Well, the lockout threshold was 3, and they did not tell me that, and I ended up locking out most of their domain. It was ridiculous, and they were flipping out. It was a headache, but
it was a good laugh for all, apparently.
Clear communication, people. Clear communication.
And some of these things, now client side of things, again, we kind of go through this pretty quick, but some of this we've already touched on, but it works for both sides. So poor or inaccurate scoping, you want to make sure that that things that are important to your environment you're actually allowing the pen tester to check these things out, like the domain controller.
Removing the domain controller from the scope limits testing, such as domain resources and checking policies and things like that. Don't try not to limit it. Listen to the pen testers, because most of the time we know what we're doing. So, when we're saying, hey, don't let us be so restricted to this. Let us show you this, or hey, this domain controller, I know it's not in scope, but you've got, LLMNR, or I can use Respond, or I can do whatever and do all this stuff. Let me show you. So I think it's important to always have that communication open, even when you're on site. Don't keep it just so static, but also avoid scope creep too.
Yep. Yeah, leaving out entire subnetworks or departments. Again, this all kind of goes back to scope. So why are you leaving out the entire dev environment, or whatever it may be? Just consider what things you're leaving out and why you're leaving them out.
Restricted scopes is completely bypass assessing any sort of lateral movement. So you get access to it, and or let's say you get access to a box, and you can see several other systems out there, and you can see that they got some vulnerabilities. You did some passive scanning or whatever, but they're outside of scope. But you know that if you get access to that, you could probably pivot from it and get access to another area. Yeah. So I think again, it's communicating this stuff, and this is more real world, right? A lot of times people have these pen testers come in and they're like, well, we want you to do this. We want it to be like hackers are trying to break into our network, but don't do this. And could you avoid this area here? And don't use this guy when you're doing social engineering, because we don't want our team to get mad at us and not trust us, or things like that. That is not real world. Yeah. If you're really wanting a depiction of that, is, I mean, it's not, of course it's not going to be real world, but as close to it as possible for penetration assessment, that you're able to say, hey, I'm going to replicate this and be as close as possible within the confines, within the time limit, and then get a good comprehensive overview of your security.
Limiting what the assessor can do. I think we've touched on this a little bit already too, but so yeah, you guys can see what we've got out there, but you are not allowed to exploit anything. If you see a potential exploit, just let us know and stop there. Has anybody heard that from a client before? Yeah, so it's not a very uncommon thing. So just, consider the risks there. If you're going to make a stop when we find a vulnerability, just consider the risks of other things that you might be missing out on.
Not enough time to thoroughly complete the assessment or your PowerPoint presentation during Derbycon.
Yeah.
Rushing the assessor, not providing access or credentials until last minute. Time management is super important for both the pen tester and the client. And I think that should be mutually respected. Yes. Yeah. 5 minutes. Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. So yeah, another thing too, providing the scope on a printed piece of paper.
Yeah, it's awful. Go in there and it's several hundred IPs, and they give you a piece of paper, and you're like, could you send me the file to this? I have other things to do other than transposing all these numbers. And so, yeah, sure, no problem. So what they do is they send you a screenshot from the scope from the previous report.
It was like, a PDF. I couldn't copy and paste.
Like, do you have this somewhere I can copy paste? And yeah, so don't do that.
Not preparing internally for the assessors, the engagement date, waiting for the information that should have already been discussed. We kind of already talked about this, but it's also important to understand that any kind of rescheduling fees that are in the statement of work, because I think sometimes both the pen tester and the client sometimes forget that, hey, this is going to cost resources, scheduling, and everything like that.
Yep.
And I'm talking 100 miles an hour right now.
So,
yeah,
no places to sit, go on site, and they're like, yeah, we knew you guys were coming. I'm like, okay, well, where do we go? I'm like, oh yeah, you need to sit somewhere, or you need to plug into our network. I'm like, yeah, so
we'll put you under the desk in the network department area behind these cables, and here's a milk crate. Can you set this? Happened, by the way.
Milk crate.
Here's a milk crate. Good luck.
Or you say in the kickoff call, are we going to be sitting in a boardroom, server room, whatever? Because you want to know if you need to bring a parka if you're going to be sitting in the server room all day, so you're not freezing to death. And like, oh yeah, we have a boardroom, mini fridge, cater lunch. Then you get there and we're like, oh yeah, we didn't set that up, so you're going to be in the server room sitting on a milk crate, and you didn't bring a jacket. So that's not cool.
Not notifying
correct literally, but
parties involved, and sorry to rush and cut Brent off like that, but sometimes he just keeps going. Yeah. No, and again, we apologize for having to rush this, guys. And if you have questions or stuff and you want to talk more about it, we can. But also not notifying the correct parties, things like that. So if you've got like Amazon or something, you need to notify them. Make sure you're doing that.
Yep. And again, this will be available as a .exe after our talk. So, social engineering assessments, excluding C-level employees. I know that's a pretty common thing, but again, just consider the risks. People that are coming after you maliciously, they don't care. Like, oh, better not go after that guy. He's the CEO. He might get mad. We don't want to upset the company. Just consider the real world risks that you're.
And excluding GISES too. This has happened to me a lot, where they're like, hey, we don't want you to pretend to be anything to do with networking or security or anything like that. And when you're sending out these phishing or doing phishing attempts, like, why? Because we don't want to break that trust. We don't want them to think every time we send out a notification as a security team or as the internal network team that they're going to believe that it's some kind of phishing attempt.
Yeah, it's like, so you call and like, would you like to take a survey? Or like, what do you're limited.
Got to finish your security awareness training. Click here.
Yeah. So, notify. Oh, so we've had things before where we're going to do a physical assessment, and the only guy that knows that we're going to be there is the guy that then goes and tells the entire company, hey, these guys are going to be here this day, so look out for anybody trying to do anything fishy because we want a good report, or whatever it may be. You're totally wasting your time. This has happened on a few occasions, so.
Yeah, where the security guards will know we're there, and we're trying to do like a covert social engineering and physical hybrid security assessment. We're trying to break in. As soon as we walk in, security guards are like, hey guys.
Yeah, you don't work here.
Are you serious right now?
Like, I just walked in to use the bathroom, so, it's like, this is fishy. So, hey, we got through. I know we're pretty much out of time, but if anybody has any questions or anything, we'd love to answer those. We'll stand outside for a little bit, but thank you so much for coming and hanging out.
And thank you for your patience as well. And for everybody that helped out with troubleshooter. I got a new laptop up here if anybody wants it. I'm giving this away. So who died second in the